Tears of the Kingdom is a massive game, not only in size, but in the amount of options and mechanics that are available to you that you may not know about. In this video, I've combined all of my main guides into one ultimate beginner's guide to cover everything you need to know for Tears of the Kingdom. Let's go! So we'll start with the easiest one, and that's hearts or stamina. Now, just like in Breath of the Wild, you will need to go to shrines to collect a particular item. In this case, it is the Light of Blessing, and then trade these items in at prey shrines for either hearts or a stamina container. The initial decision here about which you should pick is a tricky one, but I honestly think for the most part, you should be picking hearts, at least until you've got a fair chunk of hearts, because at the start of the game, you can get one shot by bombs or any sort of other shenanigans. So it's very easy to die. So the more hearts you have, the more you'll survive, plus you won't have any strong armor at the beginning. And in terms of stamina, you can actually refresh your stamina even while you're actively using it by either stamina elixirs or by stamina food. So you'll never really run out of stamina, but you'll often run out of hearts and die. To make stamina regen food or elixirs, if you use restless critters with the bokoblin horns, you can make stamina elixirs. And then in terms of food, the simplest food that you'll probably get like early is the stam bulb, and you can just put multiple of these in the cook pot to get stamina regen food, but there is also staminoka bass and some other food items as well that can restore some stamina. But for the most part, the stam bulbs are the easiest one to get, and you can just pop multiple of these in the pot if your purpose for that item is just to increase your stamina while you're climbing or doing things like that. But if you're just looking for shrines, there are tons of them near like the center of Hyrule, and they're the easiest ones to spot. You'll often also find them in the Sky Islands or also in caves. They are all over the place, exactly the same as they were in Breath of the Wild. Upgrading your armor does work the same as it did in Breath of the Wild, in that you'll use the Great Fairies to increase your armor's actual armor rating. However, how you unlock them is entirely different. This is all linked to a particular quest chain, which I guess technically starts at the Woodland Stable, but for the most part before that, you'll need to join the Lucky Clover Gazette as a journalist. In order to do this, you'll need to head up to the Northwestish region. Here, you'll find a stable that's now the home of the Lucky Clover Gazette, like the people that make the newspaper, and when you talk to them, you'll be able to join as a journalist. This will kick off another quest chain as well, specifically linked to them, but we're talking about the armor upgrades here. So after you've done that, head back to the Woodland Stable, and that will actually kick off the quest chain. Now, when you talk to the musical troupe here, they'll tell you that they need to repair their wagon so they can go up and see the Great Fairy that's nearby. In order to do this, you just need to attach some wheels to the wagon, and you'll need to have a horse that can actually pull the wagon so you can pull them up to the Great Fairy. And this is pretty simple to do. You just need a couple of pony points to be able to unlock the harness attachment for a horse. You will have to get a horse, but if you did have a horse in Breath of the Wild and you have a Breath of the Wild save on your Switch, you've already got horses, but you can go and tame one the same as you would have in both of these games. Now, once you've got a horse and you can attach it to the wagon, head up to the Great Fairy. They will sing her a song and she will actually come out, and then you'll be able to upgrade your gear in the same way you would have in Breath of the Wild. Now, you can only upgrade it a little bit here in terms of enhancement level because you haven't unlocked the rest of the Great Fairies. However, when you talk to Tira, she will tell you where you can find the other fairies. They are near stables as well, and you've also got to do a quest for the musicians up there, and they'll ask you to find other of their troupe that have gone missing, and then you'll bring them back, go up to the fairy, and you'll unlock that next Great Fairy as well. So there's 4 of them, just the same as there was in Breath of the Wild. If you're trying to unlock all of them, that's how you start that actual quest chain, and then go to those locations and go and complete them. Next, we have Hestu and those inventory upgrades. Now, Hestu and the inventory upgrades with the Korok Seeds works exactly the same as it does in Breath of the Wild, so we won't cover this too much in depth, but the first thing you need to know is that Hestu is found near the Lindor's Brow in the Northwestish, sort of to the west of where Hyrule Castle is. When you go here, you'll find him. Now, I didn't actually record at this time as I was nowhere near my computer when I found him there, but that's where you find him. He'll have a little quest for you. You'll do that. He'll give you your first couple of inventory upgrades, and then he moves to Lookout Landing, which is where you will primarily find him after that point, and then you hand in your Korok Seeds to upgrade your weapons stash, your bow and shield stash, same as you would in Breath of the Wild. With these new abilities and being able to run like powered devices, upgrading your energy cells is a huge importance. In order to get a energy well, you'll first need Zonite, which you can then turn into crystallized charges, and then you trade in those crystallized charges for energy cells. It's kind of a complex process. So we'll start at the start of the process, which is with collecting Zonite. So you would have got some during your Great Sky Isle adventure, and mostly Zonite is found under in the depths. Now, you'll find heaps of creatures here that'll drop them, but you'll also find different like deposits where you can pick up Zonite, which will respawn, so mark it on your map if you do want to go back to that location to collect more. Once you've got Zonite, you need to head to a forge, which you can then use at the forge to trade that in for the crystallized charge. Large Zonite will then trade for the larger crystallized charges, and then the normal ones like Zonite is 3 for 1 crystallized charge. You need 100 crystallized charge to get 1 energy well, which can take some time, but if you're going down into the depths often and you are specifically trying to upgrade these, you can definitely get there without too much effort. You'll also find charges in chests occasionally as well. Once you have collected 100 crystallized charge, you'll need to go to a crystal refinery, and the closest one or the best one to go to is the one at Lookout Landing, which is just right near there. And you go there, give them 100 crystallized charge, and they will pop out an energy well for you, which will increase like your batteries by 1/3. You can also increase your batteries by just like consuming a Zonite charge. It'll give you like an overcharge amount, or say if you don't have full batteries, then it will just like refill that. So say if you're, in the middle of the air, you just want that little bit of extra juice, you can do that. The last one is a bit of a spoiler, so we're going to do this in 2 parts. I'm going to give you a spoiler-free version of this, and then I'm going to give you a spoiler version of this, okay? So the spoiler-free version of this is, I'm not going to tell you what the upgrade is. What I am going to tell you is that after you have completed 1 of the 4 temples, go back to Lookout Landing and talk to Joshua. She will give you a quest that will continue that quest chain that you initially started when you talk to her after you first get to Lookout Landing, with that camera work in the depths when you first go down into the depths. But I won't say anything more about that, so you can either figure that out yourself, or I'll tell you the spoiler version right now. So what this will unlock is an ability called auto build. Now, if you don't want to wait until you have beaten 1 of the 4 temples, you can just go to the location in the depths at the Great Abandoned Central Mine. There's a couple of ways that you can get here. You can either just go down to the depths and like make your way there, or if you're above ground on the surface, you can just go down one of the like red holes, which will take you closer down to where that actual location is. Once you reach the mines, there is a object for you to click on, the same as you would have got your other powers, and it will give you the Ultra Hand upgrade so you can auto build objects. And there's a little tutorial here that you'll go through, and then after that you'll have the ability unlocked. This is a really good quality of life ability because you can just continue to craft things that you have either previously crafted, or even learn like different schema stones, which will give you schematics on how to craft things. Like the fan plane, for example, is the first one you get there, but there are other ones of these which will teach you how to make these additional designs. It just makes that build process a little bit easier, especially when you're constantly having to build things or trying to build things. Like say if you want to fly around in an airplane, like you can just make it from this auto build so much simpler than having to try and build it or find these objects every single time that you want to build something. It just helps with that process, I've found. This won't break like the quest chain. If you then go back to talk to Joshua after you've done this, you'll just be able to tell her that you've already been there and like learned the secrets of this location. So you'll still get the quest and completion. It doesn't break anything. It's just you can go and get this ability really whenever. You don't have to wait until you've beaten 1 of the temples and gone and done that whole process. So let's start out with like some fun tidbit things that don't really fit into any like category. They're just things that I've found that I couldn't really fit into any sort of a video. So firstly, let's talk about picking up apples. Now, picking up apples from trees is hard. You either got to shoot them down or climb the tree, and that's a lot of work, and I honestly hate doing it. So what I've discovered is if you use Ultra Hand to, glue some apples together with your sticky glue stuff, you can basically make an apple picker. So drop a bunch of apples from your inventory on the ground, including golden apples, so you make sure you get them from the tree, stick them all together, and then this will create a save in your auto build menu for this apple monstrosity. And then you can favorite this so you never lose it, and then every time you come across an apple tree, you can pop this out and it will just automatically pick the apples off the tree for you. It really makes harvesting apples so much easier, and apples are a great fruit to have heaps of. There's even this great spot in Central Hyrule that has like a massive apple farm and apple trees that you can collect. So I come back here just whenever I want some more apples, especially golden apples, and we'll talk about why they're important a little bit later in this video, but really good value in doing that. Also, if you are gliding or falling out of the sky, you should never run out of stamina. One, because what you can do is if you are just gliding, you can actually drop a glider or a wing glider from your inventory and then jump on it and then stand on it and replenish your stamina. Now, to do this, don't drop it from like your typical menu that you bring up just like with the up arrow. You need to drop it from your inventory because there seems to be something that that if you drop it from the up arrow, it will drop further away from you, whereas if you use your inventory to drop it, it actually drops closer, so you've got a bit more capability of actually landing on the glider. Now, other than that, you can use, stamina elixirs and stamina food to replenish your stamina, and also if you really just do happen to run out of stamina and you are plummeting towards the ground, if you pop your glider just before you hit the ground, you will survive. You always have one a glider save that you can pop even with 0 stamina, so save that until you're just about to hit the ground, pop the glider, and you'll still survive that fall. You can attach a minecart or a zonai cart to your shield for easy shield surfing. I use this as my main means of getting around because I find that traveling with horses is too difficult unless I specifically need one for something. So for the most part, if I want to get down a hill or, I don't want to use my glider, I'll typically shield surf with a minecart or a zonai cart attached to it just to make that process a little bit easier. You go a little bit faster and you get that extra durability from having that attached to your shield. And if you attach a minecart to it, you can actually ride on the minecart rails. The cherry blossom trees that you will find occasionally throughout the world, these will summon Satori if you place a piece of fruit in the offering table. Then Satori will show you where caves are nearby to this area. Caves contain a bunch of good resources, including occasionally containing armor, but they always contain a bubble frog, which you can then collect the gem from. The depths is the opposite of the surface. So every shrine on the surface has a corresponding shrine or light root on the depths and vice versa. So say if you found a shrine on the surface and you haven't found something on the depths, the chances are there will be a shrine in that exact location. And same for the depths. If you find light root in a particular location, but you haven't found the shrine matching on the surface, you just need to pop back up and find it. Do you see what I mean? How Tears of the Kingdom is an onion? All right, the Cryonis rune from the first game isn't in Tears of the Kingdom, but you can still freeze things by placing ice, whether that be throwing ice fruit at water or by using an ice weapon on water to create ice blocks that you can use to travel across these ponds and rivers. This is really valuable for some certain shrines and water-based puzzles, so you can create some simple bridges via this method. Cooking has gone through some changes in Tears of the Kingdom. Firstly, recipes are so much easier now. So any item that you have cooked with, you can click on it and click the recipe menu and it will show you anything that you have made with that item, and then you can immediately click on that and just remake that exact recipe if you have the ingredients. You'll also find recipe cards in stables and all around, so if you're looking for specific recipes, keep an eye on the walls as you'll see posters that'll contain them, as well as in books. If you can't be bothered cooking, you can obviously eat things, but if you will need to make, say, heat resistance food, you can throw some ice in it, or if you want to roast something, you can throw some fire at it. And if you are struggling with, say, a rain putting out your fires or stopping you from throwing fire at things, you can actually just build a little roof and it will block the rain. Blood moons will always trigger critical food effects. Now, critical food effects is when you hear that extra little jingle, and that means that you've essentially doubled the effects of the food that you've cooked. You can also do this with golden apples at any time. So if you've got a golden apple, you can add it to a recipe. It does take up one slot in the recipe, but it will always make it a critical food cook. So that's why farming apples are more important in this game as well. Rune abilities and the contraptions that you can make with Ultra Hand is like a core part of this game. Now, the more charges that you put into a Zonai device dispenser, the more devices it will spit out. Obviously, the large Zonai charges as well will spit out more things. Now, all the different device dispensers in the world will contain different devices. So check on the map screen to see if you're looking for a particular device, which one to go to try and find it. You can also use those charges to increase your battery life temporarily, either by the energy boost from the large or just giving you some yellow battery life with the smaller charges. If you're trying to get a glider or something into the air, but you don't have a ramp, you can lift it up with Ultra Hand and then jump on that device, rewind it to put it back up in the air. Rewind is a critical skill. Like, you can do so many cool things with rewind. Highly recommend tinkering with it, like building platforms above you and then, rewinding something up there so you can get up higher, or bridges across things. Rewind is fantastic. You can also reset anything you're using with Ultra Hand when you're rotating it by pressing the ZL button. So it'll reset it to make it flat, which if you're stuck like trying to get the rotations right, it definitely helps for that. And any vehicles and things you're building, you don't actually need a platform. You can just like stick wheels or fans and something together and whack a steering stick on it and you're good to go. I have wasted so much time using gliders and carts and that sort of thing to build vehicles if I'm trying to get around, but you don't actually need to have like something to attach them to. Just like build some wheels or some fans and away you go. And for any of those contraptions you do build, they will despawn if you get too far away from them or you get into a shrine, like you leave the zone. So just be mindful of that if you have got a vehicle and you've spent a lot of time building it, that you will lose it in those scenarios. Let's talk about some combat tips. Now, I have a full video breaking down all the different fuses and some different tips for weapons and that sort of thing. So go and watch that. But just a quick couple of things on fuses. Muddle buds will confuse the enemy, making them attack themselves. Dazzle fruits are much more important than I thought they were, as you can use it to make any enemy drop their actual weapon. So say if you just want their weapon or you want them to stop attacking you for a period of time, just drop a dazzle fruit and it will stop them from attacking. Puff shrooms are great to create a smoke screen effect they can later sneak away. Now, if you're struggling with heat or cold resistance, you can fuse a sapphire to your shield to keep you cool or a ruby to your shield to keep you warm. And then if an enemy does actually hit the shield, it will trigger that effect as well. And you can fuse certain items to your shield, say like whips that have effects on them that when you parry, it will trigger that effect as well without having to worry about an enemy even hitting you. Say in this instance, I've got like an ice whip attached to my shield and I can just trigger that ice effect whenever I like. You can recall rocks and other things that enemies have thrown at you back at them. This is great, especially on those big stone bosses. While gliding above enemies, you can become like an air bomber and drop any sort of fruits like bomb flowers or dazzle fruits onto enemies and trigger their effects as they hit the ground, and they won't see you as enemies literally never look up. And I did mention this in my weapons video, but I think it's worth calling out that Octo Rocks are great to repair any weapons that you want to keep and also add additional effects to them. All you have to do is put your weapon on the ground in front of them, have them hoover it up, and then they'll throw it back at you with a fully repaired weapon and an extra effect on it. Though an Octo Rock can only do this once per respawn, but it is highly efficient if you've got a really powerful weapon that you want to keep. So let's firstly talk about how to find good weapons. Now, the number one way to find weapons that haven't been affected by the upheaval is down in the depths. So down here, you'll occasionally run across these statues that are a little bit elevated from the ground. If you climb up there, you'll get a weapon that hasn't been affected by the upheaval, so it hasn't been decayed. This means it'll have extra durability, which is like a huge thing because weapons honestly break like so much in this game. It's crazy how fast they break, but that will help you in the durability game. And I found a fair few of these in the depths. I'm not sure if it's like a static spawn or if they're, like random, but there is heaps of these like statues around underground that you can find. By the way, if you want to know where to get this glowing armor, you can check out my armor video, which I'll have linked right here. Also, any weapon that you find just like sitting around in the world, it will actually respawn. So if you find a weapon that you particularly like that's just like resting against a pole or something, if you go back there like after a certain period of time, it will actually be there again. So you can actually find weapons multiple times. If you say find something that you like, go back and grab it. Like say, Garuda weapons, for example, anytime you fuse them, they get a ×2 for like fuse attack power. So I always like to go and grab some Garuda weapons for that extra bit of oomph that they can give me. But speaking of that durability, if you want to repair weapons, there is one way to do it, and that is with the rock Octo Rocks. So you'll find a lot of these guys in the Elden Canyons and typically just in like mountain regions. It has to be the rock variants. And if you go to one of these and you put your weapon on the ground and they like suck it in, it'll actually repair that weapon, and it will also give it like a buff as well. Like you'll get like a passive buff on that weapon. It could increase its attack power, it could increase its durability, or do something else depending on if it's like a shield or a bow or something like that. This will only occur once per rock Octo Rock that I have found, and you can kill them, and then after a blood moon when they come back you can then do it again as well. So if you find some of these like rock Octo Rocks and you have a weapon that you really like, you can go to them and do this like a thing so you can get like a buff on it but also repair that weapon if it is damaged. Just be careful to drop your weapon, not actually throw it, because you will kill them very easily like I accidentally did. But let's talk fuse combinations, and firstly we'll talk about swords, or just like melee weapons in general. So one of the key things that I have found is that always having some sort of a hammer with you is super critical. It can just be like a typical rock hammer. It doesn't have to be anything special, but it will destroy cracked rocks that you find in caves. It's also super useful for getting like the zonite deposits and things like that. There's also stone enemies that you can defeat with these sort of weapons. So really it's just like super critical to have a hammer with you. It doesn't have to be a rock hammer. You can use like different enemy attachments that can fuse into a hammer, but as long as you've got some sort of a hammer with you, you will see a lot of success for those sort of scenarios. But really like the best drops to get the highest fuse power typically come from those enemy drops, especially like boss enemies or like the harder black enemies. They're usually the highest fuse power attack things that you'll see. You can always check to see what the fuse power is on an item in your inventory, or you could like sort by highest fuse power and then attach that to weapons. I really am a fan of elemental attachments, and And the best way to get elemental attachments is in the Garuda Canyon. In the canyon and then also in the desert, you'll come across the Lizalfosses. I'm probably saying that wrong, but those enemies that will have either a ice breath or a fire breath. They'll have ice during the night and fire during the day. And if you go there and defeat them, you'll actually get their horns, which will have either an ice or a fire effect on it. You can also occasionally get their tails, which will have the same effect and it will act like a whip. But by getting these and sort of like farming them a little bit, you'll always have an ice or a fire weapon with you, which is actually really valuable to either freeze enemies. And then if you freeze an enemy and then set them on fire, you'll often deal like extra damage. Or say if you're even fighting an ice enemy and you hit them with fire, you'll often one-shot them. But elemental attachments are huge to mix up your gameplay and also affect enemies. Like there's a lot of enemies in the game that are weak to lightning. If you come across a wizard rod or you just want to add other elemental effects, you can also do this with gems. Like I've done this heaps with wizard rods to add like say an ice or a fire like rod and create that effect. Heaps of value that you can do with them as well. Moving on to shields. Now you probably know with shields that you can attach zonai devices like the fire emitter to deal like a flamethrower, but plenty of these zonai devices actually do different effects. So for example, if you attach a rocket to a shield, it will shoot you up in the air, which is a huge boost in the air. Then you can use the bullet time effect, or even just to get you on top of ledges. It's really valuable for that as well. And I've often found rockets don't have heaps of use in anything that I've really built because of their short build time, and also they set things on fire. So I typically just use it to attach to my shield to either get me somewhere or use like bullet time in certain scenarios. You can also use the wing glider in that same way. If you attach a glider to your shield and then do like the shield jump as if you were going to surf on that shield, you'll get a bit more height and allow yourself to enter bullet time for a short period of time as well. This is like a tiny little window and you won't use it heaps, but it's just like a little tech that you can do. But I'll often just like fuse an additional shield to my shield to make it last longer. Like I don't really spend too much time worrying about shields, but those are the main like techs that I've actually used. For bows, however, there is plenty of cool things you can do with bows. Now, obviously there's the bomb flowers that you've probably used yourself, but there's also, you know, the fruits and the choo-choos that you can attach for elemental effects. One of my favorite things to do is attach wings to the arrows, which make them fly further, especially for Garuda bows, because you get the zoom in effect. So it's kind of like a sniper. So you can hit enemies with wings from like a major distance away. If you have defeated any of like the bats that have elemental effects, say like a lightning bat or something, you can then use that actual elemental effect with that wing and it will deal lightning damage while still actually traveling that same distance. And the same is true for eyeballs, which you can use to like heat seek targets. If you've got like a fire eyeball or something like that and you use it, it'll still have that heat seek effect, but it'll also deal that elemental damage. Down in the depths, you'll come across the muddle buds, which can be attached to arrows to confuse enemies. This will make them attack each other rather than you. This is great because there are plenty of times where there are heaps of enemies around you where they're all attacking you, and if you can get a couple of them attacking each other, this is a huge effect to use. I'm also just a big fan of freezing enemies to like crowd control them, or like using the dazzle fruits to like blind them to sort of keep them away from you. Plenty of value with either of those sort of attachments. While you can't actually fuse anything to the bow itself, you can throw it, or drop it at a rock octorok, and if they consume it and then spit it back to you, it can get different effects, same as your weapons as well. So it's like the only real way that you can get sort of different effects on the bows themselves, but the arrows, you'll get plenty of them from fusing them with different things and experimenting with different fruits and different attachments that you can do. The best thing that I've honestly found is just to like read the descriptions, as they often tell you what the different effect that they can do, like whether it'll be, you know, blind the enemy, or, you know, the bomb, how it explodes, or what have you. A lot of them will say in their description what you can use them for in terms of a fuse thing, whereas weapons or things that don't really have much of an effect for fusing, they actually will say that they don't really do anything when you do fuse them. But there's also plenty of things you'll find throughout the world that you can just fuse to your weapons. Like we already touched on, you know, how you can attach rocks, but sometimes when you defeat enemies, they'll drop something that you can't actually pick up. You can actually fuse that to weapons in most cases as well. So there's plenty of things that you'll find throughout the world, and there's different things that I'm still tinkering with, and I'd be really interested to know what interesting fuses that you guys have come up with or found in the comments down below. So we'll start with the gem farming. So gems are a fantastic way to make money just simply by selling them. Like you will find heaps of them, especially amber. Amber is really abundant in this game, but you can just go to any vendor and sell any gems that you have. Though I would keep diamonds for the Scimitar of the Seven, which I did talk about in my last weapons video, which I'll link here for you guys. But otherwise, going into caves and farming gems is really valuable. Now, any of these like rock formations that you destroy to get gems will eventually respawn. So if you find find locations that you like, definitely mark them on your map so you can come back to them. One that I really like is in the Snowfield Stable well. If you go down here, there are plenty of these rock formations that you can break, but there's also fairies down here as well. So plenty of good reasons to go there, plus another reason which we'll talk about a little bit later. But on top of that, there is also down near the Lakeside Stable, like all the way to the south in the Bronas Forest, there are these creatures called Dondons, which if you feed them luminous stone, they will consume the stone, and then if you come back in like half hour or so, they will have dropped some gems. So if you're looking to do sort of like a gem like rotation in terms of a farm, I would come here, drop some luminous stone, and then go off and collect some gems, whether that be at the Snowfield Stable well or wherever other caves that you've come across that have a good amount of the rock formations that you can destroy. So go there, farm up as many as you can, and then return to the Dondon location and collect your spoils, and then just feed them more luminous stone. And even if you're not farming anything, you can do this. Like if you have the fast travel point, the shrine that's near the Lakeside Stable, you can return here as often as you like and just like grab up any of your gems and then drop the luminous stone and then sort of head back and forth just as you're like off exploring. You don't have to farm. You can just sort of do that as you sort of have the free time. But that's really the most successful way to make gems, is by coming here, collecting the Dondons, and then going to locations like caves on the map that have heaps of those rock formations, or going to wells that have them as well, as you can often find rock formations in wells as well. The next method is the most common, and that is farming meat. Now you could also do this in Breath of the Wild as well, but by prime meat or gourmet meat, if you cook these up into meat skewers, you can actually sell them for a hefty profit, significantly more than the meat itself is actually worth on its own. So like a full 5 stack of prime meat is worth 135, whereas a full stack of gourmet meat is worth 315 once you've turned it into skewers, which is significantly more than its original worth. In order to get these meats, the best place that most people seem to farm is around the Snowfield Stable, which is perfect because we can also drop down into that well to get the gems as well while you're there. But in sort of a circle around the stable at the Snowfield area, you'll find bears and moose and the white wolves, which will all drop prime meat and gourmet meat. So essentially you just want to like run around this area and farm up as much meat as you can, and then go to a cooking pot, cook all of that meat into skewers. You want to make sure you're using 5 in each cooking piece. To make the process easier as well, if you click on the item and then click select from recipe, you can actually just like put all of them into your hand at the one time without having to actually click each one, and then cook and just keep cooking all of that food, and then go and sell it to like either the beetle guy at the stable or just like anywhere that you are actually at. You can just go and sell it. While being one of the most simple farms, like farming meat, it's also, in my opinion, one of the most like tedious, because you've got to wait for the animals to spawn, which, you know, they're not always going to be in the same place, or, you know, things get in the way. It's just kind of annoying to have to travel around and like farm the animals. So I personally prefer gems to this one, and it's not my favorite method, but it does like function, right? Like you can go and farm the animals and cook the food, or even without farming, like if you come across any of these animals just while exploring, kill them to grab their meats as well. Elixir farming is another method that's a little bit lesser known, but it functions exactly the same as sort of the meat farm, really, in that you want to make elixirs with the higher quality or the rarer monster parts. So you want to have 4 of these plus 1 critter, and then turn that into any kind of elixir. It doesn't really matter what type of elixir, it's just the quality of those monster parts. So a big thing here, right, is if you've got like Lionel parts as well, those are sort of worth the most. And because you can farm the Lionels at the Floating Coliseum to get their parts, if you want to just like stand there and farm the Lionels for ages, you can do that and then collect all of the Lionel parts and then go and sell them. But you can use really any monster parts. It just kind of depends on what it is, and you know, the rarer the monster, the better. And obviously using the 4 monster parts is what you want to do, and then the 1 critter part to actually make that item that you're crafting. But even if you don't have these like higher quality monster parts, you can just make them pretty simply. Now if you're looking to get critters, you could just get them by like cutting down grass or finding them in caves. You can also do that, but you will get critters pretty commonly, like just by walking around cutting up some grass, you'll easily get some critters. But really the best farm is the Lionel parts, like going to the Floating Coliseum and then just going there and farming them as often as you can. There are also like other creatures around the map, and boss creatures often have the rarer monster parts that are worth a fair bit as well, but it's really up to you into what creatures you want to add to these parts. But it's a pretty easy farm. Like I don't typically go and farm these parts. It's just like when I notice I've got an abundance of them, I just quickly create a bunch of elixirs and then go and sell them just for like those extra rupees. But it's an easy one to do if you're looking for another method to try and earn as much rupees as possible. The next method is not the most efficient, but it is a way to just get rupees in a little bit of a different way. So these are the flight challenges. So the first one is on Eventide Island, which you will have to complete the quest on this island first by talking to the NPC just near the island. Once you've completed that quest, these two gentlemen will pop up at the top of the island, and you can do like this glider challenge where you have to glide the glider into like the bullseye. If you get right in the center, you get 100 rupees, and it does cost you 20 rupees just to participate in this challenge. So every time you successfully hit the bullseye, you'll essentially get 80 rupees in total. If you don't hit the bullseye, you'll get a smaller amount of rupees, so you'll get something, but you won't get that 80 sort of bonus that you do get. Now, this isn't the most efficient way, and it does take a bit of time because you'll just constantly have to be doing this, and obviously if you fail, then you don't get those rupees, so there's a bit of, you know, like risk reward into that factor, but it's a okay challenge like if you wanted to farm some rupees in a different method. And the other, which is probably the one that I prefer of these like flight challenges, is just the flight range itself. So this one, you essentially have to fly with the glider and fly through the various rings. You need to get all 35 rings to get 100 rupees at the end. The first time you do this and get 35 rings, you'll actually get 300 rupees, and after that you'll get 100, and it does still cost you 20 to participate each time. So it's that same sort of 80 rupees that you get, and there is a beginner challenge that you'll have to do first before you unlock the advanced one, which is where you can get that 100 rupees. But for the most part, this challenge is one that I prefer out of these two flight challenges. It's a little bit easier in my mind, and it's a little bit more enjoyable, and it's quicker, I think. Like, it's about 45 seconds or so. So they're not the most efficient methods, as you only get 80 rupees per like successful run, especially the risk reward factor. Like if you don't actually, you know, get the bullseye or get all 35 rings, you're not going to get that amount, but there is enjoyment in doing these and to get those 80 rupees. There is a couple of other methods as well. So you can sell armor for 600 rupees, which is a fair amount. So you could sell any armor that you don't necessarily want. And if you have amiibos can drop armor as well. So you can get extra armor via that method and then sell them. Though I don't have any amiibos, so I can't show you any footage of that. But if you don't have any amiibos like me, you can sell certain armor pieces that you can buy back from the bargainer statues, like the pieces of the depth set or any of the sort of rarer amiibo sets that you can get. The bargainer statues can sell you copies of those for pose. So say if you've got a piece that you want to sell, you can sell it and then go and buy it again for pose and then go and sell it again. So you're essentially trading pose for rupees, which is a method that you can do. You can also farm the bloopies that you see, like they often lead you to caves, but if you shoot them, they will give you rupees as well. And the last is the construction gentleman that holds up the sign. So if you complete his little challenge when you find him throughout the world, he'll give you 20 rupees plus another couple of things. Firstly, let's talk about respecking your stamina and hearts. Now, at a certain point in the story, I believe after you have completed one of the temples, when you go down into like the bunker at Lookout Landing, there is a lady here that will start a minor quest line about some noise that she's hearing through this path that has arisen here. Now, we talked about this in another video, that in this Royal Hidden Passage is where you also find the soldier armor, but if you wing a right from this location and break the rocks here, you'll be able to find a particular statue that will bargain with you with your hearts and stamina. So the first one is free. He will zap one of your hearts and then you could just ask for him to take it back. But after that, he will trade you a heart or stamina container for one or the other. So if you give him a heart or stamina, he'll give you 100 rupees. And then in order to buy it back as either a heart or a stamina, you need to pay 120. So realistically here, you're losing 20 rupees for this trade. But if you say have invested too much in hearts or invested too much in stamina and you want to change your overall like setup, you can do this via this guy. And you know, it's worth doing if say you need extra stamina for a particular sword that maybe you have lost somewhere in Hyrule, you may need that extra stamina for that. In the depths, you'll find these lights that are called pose. And what you may not know is that there are also pose that give you more than one pose, like grand pose and large pose, but there are multiple of these bargainer statues that you'll find in the depths as well as one on the above ground. The more of these statues you find, they will increasingly sell you unique rewards, plus the ones that are found in the depths. You can actually get copies of some of the unique armor as well as some weapons that you find throughout the world. So say if you've broken your fierce deity sword and you want another one, you can actually go to one of these bargainer statues and get one in the depths. So the first bargainer statue is found in Lookout Landing at Josh's lab area. You will need to progress her story a little bit before the statue will actually talk to you. I believe once you've finished the mystery in the depths section, you'll be able to talk to the statue, and this will then be able to buy some initial things from that statue, but you can ask that statue to tell you where their brethren are that are in the depths. You could go and find these or like Google them. You don't have to pay the 100 Po in order to get the location on your map, but if you do this and you go down into the underground and find those bargainer statues, for each new bargainer statue that you find and talk to, they will have a new piece of armor for you to pick up. So it could be part of that dark tunic and dark set, or it could be part of the tunic of the depth set, which has gloom resistance, which is pretty valuable. So when you stand in the gloom, it'll like remove a fake heart first before it starts removing your actual hearts. So there's benefits to that as well. But I think the big benefit to these bargainer statues is the fact that you can actually get back, say, you know, like the fierce deity sword or something like that. Like if you want more weapons that are not necessarily unbreakable, because like you'll still break, you know, the fierce deity sword, but if you want to get it again, right, then you can just go to one of these statues and buy it for pose at like really any time that you want a sword that has 38 damage just on its base value, which is pretty solid. Once you have progressed Josh's storyline and unlocked the auto build section, you can actually talk to Rupee and continue a further storyline, which will allow you to upgrade your Puripad with abilities or old upgrades from Breath of the Wild, like the sensor so you can detect shrines or other things in the world, as well as the hero's path so you can see where you have actually traveled on the map. Plus, probably the big one about this is the travel medallion, so you can like fast travel anywhere. So you need to complete those initial quests with Josha and Rupee and unlock the auto build, which I did cover in one of my other videos. I'll link that here. But once you've done that, then Rupee will go back to the tech lab at the Hateno village. I have seen some people say that he hasn't like appeared for them there for this like quest, but I'm not sure if it's linked to like a specific time, like has to pass before he appears there. Like, you know, he has to like travel there, like it takes time or something. But if you do know specifically, then put that in the comments so we can help each other out. But it does, to me, seem like it's just like a time thing. Like you've got to wait for him to travel. But essentially just by rocking up there and talking to him, he will give you the first sensor ability so you can detect the shrines of light. Same as that worked in Breath of the Wild, you just got to point towards them and you'll have to go and clear one that is underneath the lab. And then after that, you'll be able to get the quest for the other upgrades. So the first one being like the Sensor Plus, which will allow you to essentially track anything via that sensor ability. And you just need to have taken photos of 5 monsters, which you may have already done, or you could just quickly go find some monsters and just quickly snag some quick pics of them and then run back and get the upgrade. They can be like awful pictures too. Like it just has to trigger that it's like a photo of the thing. Like this photo of this boss that I took is awful. But anyway, it triggered the event so then you can go back and get the Sensor Plus. After that, you can also get the Hero's Path ability, which will then allow you to track like on your map all of your hero's path, which you've probably already completed. So you just really have to talk to him about it. Like if you've completed 15 shrines, then you can just get the Hero's Path upgrade immediately. So by the time you've probably got to this location, you may have already got it. So he should be able to give it straight to you. And then the last one, which is the really cool one, is the travel medallion. So this allows you to fast travel literally anywhere. So you can place like a fast travel medallion on the ground and then you can go back to that location multiple times, like as often as you like. So if there's somewhere that say is like really hard to reach that you want to get to, or even like if you just, you know, like to travel to a particular spot, you can place this down. Now, initially you'll have to travel to the very like top northeast-ish of the map to Rupee's old lab up there and grab like the prototype version of the travel medallion from there. Once you've done that, you can bring that back to Rupee and you'll get a travel medallion. To unlock the extra 2 medallions, you need to complete all of the Skyview towers on the map itself. Once you have completed all of them, you'll have 3 travel medallions that you can then place anywhere you like. And if you do place it down and you want to pick it up again, you can just go into inventory and then select collect and you'll be able to pick them up, say if you want to move it to other locations. But these are really massive like quality of life changes if there's particular locations that you want to travel to really quickly. And you can also use it as a way to like place it down, say if you wanted to go back to like sell stuff at a shop or do something like that, but you don't want to lose where you are, you could just like pop one down, go back to where you wanted to go, sell stuff, like cook things, whatever you, and then go back to immediately where you were. So there's a lot of value in that as well. The last one we're going to talk about is a minor like spoilery thing, but if you have completed one of the temples, then that is like all you need to know in terms of spoilers. Like you've passed that spoiler point. I just wanted to give that sort of warning here just in case. So once you've completed one of the temples, you'll get your first like avatar of the sages, and you can actually upgrade these sages to make them like do more damage, and they're actually substantial upgrades. So in the Sky Isles, there are these things called Sage's Will, which you may find, like they're usually in like hidden chests, like in the Sky Isles. There's so much stuff in the Sky Isles that's hidden around, by the way, but these chests are hard to come across, and I've only found like 4 or 5 of them, I think, but you will come across these hidden chests, and then you can take them back to like the prayer statues and upgrade one of your sage's avatars. So you have to pick which one you want to upgrade here, and I chose Tulin, and it increased his attack power, and it is actually a decent upgrade. Like I went and like fought some enemies, or I let Tulin fight some enemies, and it is a substantial increase. It seems like he attacks more often as well, like in terms of shooting his bow, and then the damage overall. Like I had Riju out at the same time, and you can sort of see the difference that she's doing a very small amount of health, and then Tulin is like absolutely shredding these mokoblins. So it is a worthwhile upgrade, especially for the amount of damage output that they can do by upgrading them. So I highly recommend you do that. But you can like either search where to find them online, or just like hunt around the Sky Isles, as they're pretty well hidden. Like some of them require you to do different puzzles as well to find them, or they're like underneath certain sky platforms, but there is plenty of them to find up in the Sky Isles. If you want more Tears of the Kingdom content, I've got must-do quests, armor sets you can grab, plus the best unbreakable and powerful weapons that you need to grab as well. So check those out. Thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is NorZZa, and I hope you have a great day.